Hey, Vanessa here. I can't believe it, but Nocturne is heading into its 8th year. And we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of being an independent podcast again, after parting ways with our friends at KCRW. It was a bittersweet parting in the midst of a tumultuous year. But I'm here to say that I celebrate you, Nocturne listeners. And I really, really celebrate the amazing folks who support this show by donating what they can to help me keep making it. So in the spirit of celebration, we're having a limited time special offer on Patreon for the next month. I've made delightful little Nocturne treat bags with beautiful Nocturne stickers and some other little surprises. And if you join and support the show on Patreon in the next 30 days at the $5 a month tier or higher, you'll get all the existing benefits, and I'll send you one of these bags of treats along with a handwritten note expressing my tremendous gratitude. Head over to patreon.com/nocturnepodcast now to become a regular supporter. Again, that's patreon.com/nocturnepodcast. This offer is also available to existing patrons increasing their pledge to $5 a month or more. If you already support Nocturne at that level and this special offer makes you sad, please let me know that you really want a sticker, because I don't want you to be sad. Email me at vanessa@nocturnepodcast.org. I need to make a disclaimer here. The story you're about to hear is about something that is dangerous, illegal, and I don't recommend it at all. You're listening to Nocturne. I'm Vanessa Lowe.
I was 23 and I did a tandem skydive in Chicago because my friend wanted to do one for his birthday. So when they opened the door of the airplane, you get this rush of cold air that, when you're flying on a commercial airline, they don't open the doors. If they do, there's something that's gone really seriously wrong. But, you get this blast of cold air, and there's this particular smell that comes with being at that high of an altitude. It's just really crisp air. And so, I can remember that pretty distinctly, even though that was almost 13 years ago. And, they start scooching you toward the door, and you don't really have much say in this because you're strapped to a person who's pushing you slowly toward this door. And then they'll get you in the door, and then they'll do the count, and they'll go 3, 2, 1. And, at that point, your brain just is taking in so much information that it's never experienced before, that some people almost black out a little bit, but the brain does this weird thing where it's releasing all these chemicals to try and get you to just be able to adapt to what the brain thinks is you jumping to your death, when really it's just a tandem skydive. But at the time, it was, they put you in the door and it was like, oh man, I don't know if I want to do this. But it's like anything in life, right? That's scary. As soon as you take the first step and you get into that unknown realm, magic happens and you go, oh wait, this really isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So in the actual free fall, you're screaming, you're smiling, you're drooling, and just all these wonderful things are happening, and the parachute opens, and then your brain is trying to process the fact that, you went up in an airplane, but now you're here floating in the sky like a bird. So it's a very, the first time you do that, it's a very powerful experience. The moment that your foot leaves the plane and you're committed to the jump, it's a very liberating moment. You've just taken a big leap, both, physically and metaphorically, into an unknown area of your life. And it's very special, that moment where it clicks, where you're going, oh, I was just totally freaked out about this, and now I'm falling through the sky attached to another person. And the brain goes, whee! And I'm having a really good time. And instantly there was a recognition in the brain of ooh, I really like the way this makes me feel. It really just shatters your perception of just what is possible. So my name is Danny Weiland. I live in Denver, Colorado, 35 years old, and massage therapist and commercial residential painter by trade. So jack of all trades.
That first skydiving experience set Danny on course to do something that most people would never dream of doing. Something that for most people would actually be seriously terrifying, and for good reason.
So base jumping is a parachute activity where we jump off of fixed objects. Of course, most people will never do it.
I feel compelled to say it one more time. This is super dangerous and illegal, and just please don't do it.
Base jumping, you are jumping off of either a building, an antenna, a span, which most people know as a bridge, or a piece of earth. And so most of the time you will hike or climb to the top of these objects and then jump off and deploy your parachute, and then float to the ground and land safely. At least that's the goal. It doesn't always happen that way. I've jumped, we're getting close to 700 base jumps. There was a couple years where I didn't make one base jump. It ebbs and flows. It's, when you're in it, you're totally in it. And then, if somebody close to you dies, there's definitely a withdrawal from the sport. And then you slowly start to get back into it.
Danny knows a lot of people who have died base jumping, including his friend John.
My best friend, who introduced me and actually taught me how to base jump, he passed away 5 years ago from base jumping. Yeah, he had an accident in Europe. And he was everybody's everything. So that was a really hard loss for everybody.
Danny met John at a skydiving center in Colorado, and then John became his mentor. He took him on his first base jump.
The first jump, you just don't know what you don't know type of a thing. And I think going into base jumping with skydiving experience, you sort of think like, oh, it's going to be like a skydive. And then when you actually get to the base jump, you realize very quickly, like, this is a very different animal. There's a lot more fear. There's a lot more doubt. There's a lot more just hormones and neurotransmitters that you don't really know how to regulate yet that are coursing through your body. And so, the first jump or two, you're really excited, but you're also just really terrified because you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't have that much information. So the first jump that we went on was it's called the Prime Bridge. It's in Idaho, Twin Falls, Idaho. And it's one of the only 100% fully legal base jumping sites in the United States. For whatever reason, this town has taken it upon themselves to kind of open their arms and welcome our community, which, we really appreciate, but definitely not the norm. So it's a 486-foot bridge, and you've got these cars and semis that are whizzing by you at 65 miles an hour. And, you're voluntarily climbing over this. It's probably a 4-foot railing, probably comes up to, just higher than your belly button. And, you got all this gear on, and you have to very carefully step over this bridge one leg at a time. And now you're on the other side of the bridge. So you're looking straight down and, it's you in 486 feet of just space. And I think once you're holding on to the railing and you look down and you realize that, okay, I chose to be here. I signed up for this. And I'm the one that actually has to do this. In skydiving, there's a bunch of people behind you, and a light goes on that goes from red to green. Once it goes green, everybody starts jumping out of the airplane at different intervals. With base jumping, it's not like that. There's no green light. It's just go when you're ready. And so you are the one that has to, make the decision to count down from 3 to 2 to 1, and then, jump off into the abyss and start your base jumping career. And, once you learn how to do that, it's just 10 years later, and here we are. But the first time, it didn't feel great for me. It was more like, oh God, I can't believe I'm doing this. 3, 2, 1, okay. The first couple times will normally send your stomach into your throat, because when you jump off of something in base jumping, you get the pull of gravity just ripping you down toward the earth. As opposed to on an airplane, you're already going, close to 100 miles an hour into the relative air. So when you jump out, there's already like wind resistance. And so you don't get the sensation that you are falling into space. But of course you have to stay very focused through all of this, because your life depends on it.
It isn't that Danny instantly liked that feeling of having his stomach in his throat.
Not in the beginning, but you learn to love it. Because the reality is that the scariest part of the base jump is everything leading up to the actual jump itself. So thinking about the jump, the anticipation of walking toward the jump, getting to the exit point, all of those things are way, way scarier than when your feet leave the object. Because when your feet leave the object, what happens is, you've got this rapid heart rate, you're breathing really hard, your mind is often racing, but as soon as your feet leave the object that you were jumping off of, there is this total silence, total peace, total acceptance, and total focus. And, the amount of laser focus that you get from putting yourself in that situation is so stimulating. The big misconception is like, oh, it's the adrenaline, you're chasing the adrenaline. It's like, not necessarily. Like, the adrenaline is part of it, but it really is just a peaceful, present experience. I mean, there's nothing else that your brain can actually focus on except what's happening around you. Yeah, it's magic. I mean, you're jumping into just magic is what I call it.
How much magic depends on how high an object you're jumping off of.
With base jumping, you can jump off things that are low. And the lower the object, obviously, the shorter the amount of time you get to spend in the air. Vice versa, the higher the object, the more time you get to spend flying your body. Some of the lowest things I've jumped is 160 feet, but you're starting to get into an area where if there's a mistake, you just don't really have enough altitude to fix the mistake safely, and then you get into trouble. And, the setup for that's a little bit different than going to a place like Europe and jumping off, a 3,000-foot cliff. But really, I think the magic comes when you are, flying through the air for minutes at a time versus counting the experience in seconds. So very, very different, but both very enjoyable.
Base jumping is, let's say it again, illegal.
And being in trouble with the law is expensive, and it's just a pain. So the whole point of jumping at nighttime is to avoid that, right? If we could jump during the daytime and not get in trouble, chances are a lot of people would prefer that. That being said, night jumps are really special because just the sensory perception is so different. And without getting to experience it, it's hard to really articulate how heightened it is at nighttime, just because, you can't see. You don't have all that distraction. And so when you're falling through the air at nighttime, you can really, you can feel the air on your skin in a way that you can't really feel during the day. You can hear sounds that you would never think that you could possibly hear because they're so small. Like, I've heard crickets in free fall, but the coolest thing that you're going to get to hear is the sound of your body slicing through the air. And so as your body falls faster and faster, obviously you jump and it's silent the first moment that you jump. And as you continue to fall, it gets louder and louder and louder and louder. It's like basically starting a jet engine and standing in front of it, and just gets louder and louder and louder. And then all of a sudden it stops. Your parachute opens and it's totally silent. And the parachute opening itself is extremely loud, especially at nighttime. It sounds like a shotgun. And when you're under that parachute and that bang goes off, you're safe for the most part. Once you orient yourself to the direction that you want to go. And it's a lot to process in the beginning, because your brain goes, wait a minute, like we were just up there and now we're down here, and it was quiet and it was loud, now it's quiet again. Hearing myself talk about it out loud in this way makes me sound like a crazy person, but it's just so satisfying. It's just so enjoyable. But at the same time, because you can't see where you're going, I should rephrase, you can see, but you can't see as well. Your brain starts to just become a little more active in the areas of fear and doubt, and all of those sensations are definitely elevated, at least for me at nighttime. And it can be very ungrounding and unnerving, and it makes you question, like, should we be doing this? Like, is this okay? And again, your rational brain goes, hey, we just did this like 7 times during the day. Like, nothing's really changing, but for some reason, it's totally different experience right now. So yeah, again, during the day, you can perceive things a little bit better. And in the event that there was any issue with your parachute, however minor or major, you'd be able to see it. You'd be able to deal with it a lot better. And, that gives you more confidence. So when night falls, you don't have that same luxury. And, if something goes south, however minor, you have to deal with it the best you can. You can't really see much. So you need to be able to feel what's happening. Because for me, the sensations that are happening in your body are going to give you a lot more information than necessarily what you see. You just trust your intuition, you trust your instincts, you're trusting your procedures that you've become comfortable doing, and you just have to have faith that it's going to work the same way it did when it was light outside. And most of the time it does.
While base jumpers leap from bridges and antennae, tall buildings offer multiple challenges.
So sneaking into buildings, that's a lot of fun. I think I jumped my first building. I had 120 base jumps, and we jumped this beautiful 560-foot condo right on Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. Yeah, and we, you've got the lake there. You can see all the boats. And it's just one of those situations where you're standing on top of a building at nighttime, and everybody else is doing normal stuff, right? So-and-so is coming home from the bar. You can see people riding their bikes coming home from whatever they're doing. And you're like, wow, the decisions in my life have led me to be on top of a building in the middle of the night, doing all of this stuff. There's a couple buildings in downtown Chicago. I don't know that I want to reveal the names of the buildings. Right on Upper Wacker Drive, there's a couple really good hotels. I'm like 500 feet right along the river.
That's a 50-story building.
Yeah, it's basically 10 foot per story. And, the access it's pretty easy. You just walk into a hotel, act like you belong there, and take the elevator to the top. And then you find your way onto the roof. And once you're onto the roof, you know that you're going to be good to go. So I think in the course of a year living in Chicago, we probably jumped about 6 or 7 different buildings pretty consistently.
One memorable jump wasn't notable so much for its height as for its level of difficulty, in a couple of ways.
So a friend of mine and myself were in Chicago, and we were looking at a hotel that we'd always looked at. It wasn't very high, 30 stories. But it was very cool, and it was very technical, meaning you really had to execute a high-level jump because the landing area was very small, and if you overshot the landing area, you would be in a very raw construction site. So we had gone into this hotel, and, as much as you want to pretend like you belong when you walk into a hotel with a parachute on your back, you have it in a bag, right? It's not just the raw parachute with your leg straps on. Like you're walking in, you're trying to be pretty low profile. So a lot of the times you'll carry the parachute in its case, almost like a duffel bag. But when you see 2 guys walk into the same hotel with the same duffel bag being carried the same way, it's kind of like, the eyebrows go up, And it was Saturday night, I remember, because there was a ton of partying downtown. I think this was probably around midnight, so kind of on the earlier side. It's not like, you're not walking into a hotel during rush hour. Like you're seen by all. And we go into this hotel, and the clerk is like, hey, can we help you? And we're like, oh yeah, we're just heading up to our room. And, you could tell that we didn't know where we were going. And, this clerk was sort of like, okay. And, we go up to the top floor, and we're walking around looking for the roof. And another person comes up, probably that had been, alerted from the first person that like, hey, these two guys look a little weird. I don't think they knew that we were going to base jump. But when you're meandering through a hotel with a strange backpack that matches your friends, and you're jiggling doors and you're opening up stairwells, it's a red flag, right? So, this other gentleman asked us, like, do you guys need help? And we're like, oh no, we were just going for a walk. And again, you're trying your best to blend in, but what you're doing is not normal. Really, there's no blending in, right? You just have to do your best to act like you belong. And so, we're like, no, we're good. We're just killing time. Waiting for our friend to get back and we don't want to hang out in the room. He's just like, we need your room number and we need your last name. We're like, all right, yeah. Like, we're actually just getting ready to leave. At that point, the guy was like, okay, you guys are full of shit. Please leave the hotel. So, we take the elevator down. We get off at the floor below. So we basically just ducked down one floor. We ran back up the stairs. So now we're on the roof and got our stuff on real fast. And at that point, you don't know, is that person still following us? Like, does he know what's going on? So you're just kind of trying to hurry. And, at that point, we heard the door open and we turned around and luckily he didn't see us, but he'd obviously followed to some degree. But, we haven't been spotted because we were down below these big ducting systems, but someone has opened that door. And so at this point, we're looking at each other like, should we just like go jump? Should we wait? And so, obviously in our rational brains, we're like, hey, it's nighttime. No one's running around looking for people jumping off of buildings. Like he probably just thinks we're urban explorers running around trying to cause trouble. But, eventually the door closes and we kind of wait 5 minutes. And, 5 minutes at that point seems like forever. And, we peek our little heads out and we don't see anything happening. We're like, okay, like at this point our brains are saying, okay, is this person gonna like call the cops? Are there gonna be cops waiting on the ground? But you have to make a decision. It's like, well, the sooner we go, the sooner we can get out of here. So I jumped first because my friend had reservations about what to do under his parachute, because he's like, that's a technical landing. I said, yeah, but you'll be fine. Once you get a hang of how base jumping canopies work, you can actually get really accurate with your landing. I mean, you can put it down, within a 3 square foot area if you want to. So we jumped off the building. We landed, and unfortunately you have to sink your parachute and land right in front of the hotel. I'm talking right in front of the doors. And so we both land and we both look inside, and the clerk who had asked us, like, hey, can we help you guys? makes the recognition like, oh, you guys. And, we're on the ground, like, screwing up our parachutes. Like, okay, we got to get the hell out of here. And everybody on the ground is cheering, and, the hotel staff is starting to congregate inside, and, then we see people starting to run toward us, and it's like, oh, time to go. And so we just, we ran with our stuff, and we ran down the road, and, we got away, and nothing happened.
The reaction of people on the street when they see Danny and his friends float down from the top of a city building continues to be a source of curiosity and some delight.
In your mind, you're doing something that's very wrong, and you're doing something that's very illegal. But the response that you get is, very much the opposite. The response you get from the public is like, yay, hooray, like, you guys are heroes. And it's like, it's strange, but it's just an exciting thing to see. It's nighttime. You're going about your normal night, and all of a sudden it's just this shotgun blast after shotgun blast, and you look up and there's people flying parachutes in downtown. And that's just so special, right? Like, that's not something that happens every day. And I think it is like everybody's inner child starts to dance a little bit. And I don't know that it's so much like, yeah, you're sticking it to the man, versus, wow, like, I used to dream about doing that as a kid. Like, you guys are flying. Like, Everyone wants to fly.
When it comes to jumping off of buildings for fun, of course, falling to one's death is not the only risk. If you're not careful, you could come down right in front of a moving car or truck. Drivers are not generally on the lookout for people coming from above.
Normally you do this and avoid very busy roads. So you'll choose your building selection based on like, hey, this building jumps into a park, or this building jumps into a cul-de-sac. Like, you're not going to choose a building that jumps onto an expressway. Like, that would be a very ignorant thing to do. Not only for your own safety, but for the safety of, everybody driving who thinks that they're just going to be driving and not encountering, parachutists landing in the expressway. So there's a lot of judgment that goes into choosing that, but you have what's called ground crew, which is normally other base jumpers who either decide not to jump that night, or skydivers who just don't base jump, but want to watch the base jump. And what the ground crew does is you have a radio or a cell phone, and you'll radio to your people on the ground, say, hey, we're getting ready to jump. There's 4 of us. You trust your ground crew, and they will, for most of the time, once they see you in the air and they know they have a projection of where you're going to land, a good ground crew will, make sure that if there's a car coming, they will stop any cars that might be going on the same path, and they'll just stop them in the road and explain to them, like, hey guys, like, sorry to stop you, but look up. And nine times out of 10, the people in the cars are like, wow, that's so cool, thanks for stopping us. But that is a risk, and that's one of the reasons that most base jumpers choose to jump really, really late at night, because 2-3 in the morning, there's really not a lot going on in the world. So it's just safer for everybody.
Safer is a relative term, though.
I've been jumping for almost 10 years now, and I still get nervous before jumps. It sounds so silly. It's like, oh, you've done this so many times, but you still get that heart rate increase. Your palms get a little sweaty. And I think it would be abnormal to get to the edge of a jump and have no feeling. I think if you ever get to that point in your jumping career, you should probably stop. I mean, you have to be alert and oriented to a pretty high degree in order to get yourself out of trouble should something go wrong. The thing about base jumping is when everything goes right, it looks really easy. But when things go wrong, they go wrong and they happen so quickly and compound so intensely that if you don't react and respond right away, just a normal run-of-the-mill jump can turn into a really, really bad situation.
No matter how experienced you are at base jumping, there's no denying that every single time you jump, you're risking your life.
The fear is that if you keep doing something for long enough that's high risk, that you're going to get injured or killed. Yeah, I think that's definitely a thought that goes through a lot of base jumpers' minds much more often than a normal person. I don't know that a normal person walks around once or twice a week and contemplates like, oh, what would happen if I died tomorrow? Like, what would it do to my friends? What would it do to my family? I think the hardest thing would be to be a parent.
Danny's parents have been supportive, as is his girlfriend.
It's one of those things where when people who love you in your life see something that makes you happy, it's really hard to tell someone not to do something that really sets their soul on fire. Doesn't mean that you love it. I've seen close friends get really nasty injuries that's taken them years to recover from. And there are times where you're like, man, base jumping has caused a lot of good and quite a bit of bad. But it's how you take the information coming in and what you do with it. And I can't say that I would want to do it any other way, because as morbid as it sounds, when you think about that stuff, it really gives you a much better opportunity to live more fully and put the things that are important into perspective. And for me, that's friends, family, health, and helping people.
At a certain point, even the most ardent base jumper has to come to terms with the fact that the risks may no longer outweigh the joys.
I'm 35. I've been base jumping for 10 years this May. The consequences for a 27-year-old man versus a 40-year-old man are going to be very different. I didn't really get into my career until a couple years ago. And so before I really had a serious career, I was just working to play. But once you have a little bit more established of a career and you're a little bit older, the sneaking around stuff just doesn't have the same appeal to it. It's still fun. I still love it so much, but I definitely do not foresee that I will do this forever. I just don't. I've slowed down a ton. In the beginning, it was all I could do and all I can think about. And, as you grow up a little bit, you realize that there's a lot more to life than just jumping off of stuff.
You've been listening to Nocturne. I'm Vanessa Lowe. Nocturne is produced by me and was created by myself and Kent Sparling, who also composed the theme music. Thank you to Sarah Jertson, who gave me the idea for this episode and connected me with a bunch of lovely base jumpers. Finally, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, starting today, we are running a 30-day special offer on Patreon. Sign up to support us at the $5 a month level or higher and receive all the regular benefits, plus a limited time goodie bag of Nocturne stickers and other cool stuff. Benefits include monthly Nightlight bonus episodes, and the next one is an extra base jumping story that sort of blows my mind. This offer goes until October 22nd, which incidentally is my birthday. So sign up by then to become a regular supporter at patreon.com/nocturnepodcast and get some extra treats. Because listeners like you make it possible for me to keep making Nocturne. That's patreon.com/nocturnepodcast. Till next time, thanks for your support, and thanks for listening.